In the small town of Alaudo, a church appeared overnight, bright, beautiful, and full of miracles. But Kola discovered too late that not every voice calling God's name speaks with his tongue, and some doors once entered were never meant to be opened. Before we continue with what happened next, if you are finding this story compelling, consider subscribing. We post new African stories every week, and your support allows us to keep bringing you these deeply interesting stories. Now, back to the story. Alaudo was not a town you would find on any tourist map. It was the kind of place where dreams came to die slowly under the weight of red dust and broken promises. The kind of place where young men became old before their time, where women's prayers were longer than their sleep, and where every sunset carried the same question: will tomorrow be different? It never was. The town sat in the armpit of River State, 3 hours from the nearest city if the roads were kind, which they rarely were. During the rainy season, the roads became rivers. During the dry season, they became cracked earth that swallowed car tires whole. Most people here had never left, not because they loved Alaudo, but because living required money, and money required miracles. So when miracles finally came, nobody asked questions. They should have. Kola Adeyemi was 24 years old, but his eyes belonged to someone much older. 6 months ago, his father, Papa Kola as everyone called him, had collapsed in the yam barn. A stroke, the nurses said. God's will, the pastor at their old church had said, as if that made the pain easier to swallow. Papa Kola had been the pillar, the provider, the one who kept their small family of 3 alive through sheer stubbornness and back-breaking labor. When he died, he left behind 3 things: a wife too broken to speak, a daughter still in secondary school, and debts that multiplied like locusts. Kola inherited all 3. Within weeks, the moneylenders came, first with sympathy, then with threats. Kola sold the yam barn, then the old motorcycle, then his father's tools. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. His mother, Mama Kola, had stopped eating. She sat by the window all day, humming hymns that had no melody, staring at nothing. His sister, Bukola, asked questions he couldn't answer. Brother Kola, will we be okay? He didn't know. The old church they attended, Holy Grace Apostolic, offered prayers but no solutions. God will provide, they said, while their pastor drove a new Lexus and wore gold rings that could feed a family for months. Kola stopped going. He stopped praying too. What was the point of talking to a God who didn't answer? But desperation has a way of making even the faithless reconsider. It appeared on a Thursday. One day, the land at the edge of Alaudo, the plot everyone avoided, the one the elder said was Orun Aimu, unknown territory, was empty. The next day, there was a church. Not a small, humble chapel, a cathedral, 3 stories high, white walls so bright they hurt to look at during the day, and at the top, a cross made of neon tubes that glowed red, then gold, then white, cycling endlessly, even when NEPA took the light from the rest of the town. The church had a name painted across its entrance in bold red letters: the Mountain of Last Hope. Oke Ireti Ikeyi, the old women whispered, translating it into Yoruba: the mountain where hope comes to die, or be reborn. Nobody knew who built it. No construction crew had been seen, no trucks delivering cement, no workers mixing sand. It was as if the earth itself had pushed the building up overnight, like a tooth breaking through gums. The elders gathered at Baba Sola's compound to discuss it. "This is not natural," Baba Sola said, tapping his walking stick on the ground. That land has been empty for 40 years. My father warned us never to build there. He said the ground drinks blood." "Perhaps it is a blessing," another elder countered. "We have prayed for revival. Maybe this is God's answer." "God does not work in secret," Babasola replied. "Spirits do." But the debate didn't matter. By Sunday, half the town had already attended the first service. Kola heard about it from his neighbor, Mama Tunde, who came knocking on their door with wild eyes and breathless excitement. "Kola, Kola, you must come. I am telling you, this pastor, Prophet Eremi, he is not like the others. He prayed for me and my headache that has been troubling me for 5 years. Gone. Just like that." Kola was skeptical. "Mama, every pastor promises miracles." No, this one is different. He doesn't even ask for money. He says, "Give what your spirit tells you to give. Even silence is a seed." Hey, when last did you hear a pastor say that? Silence is a seed. Kola liked the sound of that. That evening, as the sun bled orange across the sky, Kola found himself walking toward the mountain of last hope. Not because he believed, but because he had nothing left to lose. The inside of the church was unlike anything Kola had ever seen. No plastic chairs, no ceiling fans that rattled, no offering baskets passed aggressively from row to row. Instead, the floor was covered in woven mats, and candles, hundreds of them, lined the walls, casting dancing shadows across the high ceiling. The air smelt of frankincense and something else, something earthy, familiar but wrong, like soil after a funeral. There were already 50 or 60 people inside. Some Kola recognized, others were strangers, people from neighboring towns perhaps. They all knelt on the mats, heads bowed, lips moving in silent prayer. At the front of the hall, on a raised platform draped in red cloth, stood Prophet Eremi. He was not what Kola expected. No flashy suit, no designer shoes, just a plain white robe that touched the floor, and a face that seemed ageless, neither young nor old, but timeless. His skin was dark and smooth, his head cleanly shaved, but it was his eyes that held you. Large, unblinking. When he looked at you, it felt like he was reading words inside your skull. "Brothers and sisters," Prophet Eremi said softly, his voice like honey poured slowly. "You have come because you are tired. Tired of praying to a heaven that seems deaf. Tired of fasting while others feast. Tired of hoping." The congregation murmured agreement. "But I tell you tonight, your suffering has been seen. The mountain of last hope is not just a name, it is a promise. Here, the last becomes first, the broken becomes whole, the lost becomes found." Kola felt something stir in his chest. Not belief, not yet, but possibility. "I will not beg you for money," the prophet continued. "I will not shame you for your emptiness. God knows what you carry, and tonight we will lay those burdens down." The worship began, but it wasn't like the loud, chaotic praise sessions Kola knew. This was different. Slow, hypnotic. The voices around him began to hum, a single droning note that vibrated in his chest. The candles flickered in rhythm. Prophet Eremi walked among them, touching foreheads, whispering prayers Kola couldn't hear. When he reached Kola, he paused. Their eyes met. "You carry your father's debt," the prophet said quietly. It wasn't a question. Kola's breath caught. He hadn't told anyone here about his father. "You wonder if God sees you," the prophet continued. "He does, and soon you will see him too." Before Kola could respond, Prophet Eremi moved on. The service lasted 3 hours. When it ended, Kola felt lighter, as if something heavy had been lifted, even if only for a moment. As people began to rise and leave, he noticed something strange. Some of them weren't leaving. "Why are they staying?" Kola whispered to the woman beside him. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. "For deeper prayers, only the committed remain." Kola looked toward the exit. The doors were still open. He could leave, he should leave, but Prophet Eremi was watching him. "Stay, Kola Adeyemi," the prophet said from across the room, his voice somehow reaching Kola's ears alone. "Stay, and your burdens will become blessings." Kola hesitated. Then, against every instinct, he stayed. The doors closed with a heavy metallic clunk. Kola's heart began to race. He counted the people left inside. 12, 13, including himself, all on their knees, all silent. Prophet Eremi stood at the altar, hands raised. The cross behind him, the glowing neon cross visible from outside, cast a strange light across the room. But the shadow it created on the wall didn't match its shape. It was bent, twisted, like a tree that had grown wrong. "Tonight," Prophet Eremi said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow filled the entire space, "we plant seeds in soil that heaven has prepared. Not seeds of money, seeds of self." He gestured to a large clay pot at the center of the altar. It was filled with dark soil, so black it seemed to absorb light. "Each of you will come forward. You will speak your deepest burden into this soil, and you will leave a piece of yourself, a fingernail, a strand of hair, a drop of blood. This is your covenant, your sacrifice, and in 7 days your harvest will come." Kola's stomach turned. This wasn't Christianity. This was something else. One by one, people approached the altar. An old woman cut a lock of her grey hair and buried it in the soil, whispering about a son who had abandoned her. A young man pricked his finger and let blood drip into the pot, speaking of a business that had failed. When it was Kola's turn, his legs felt like stone. I don't think I should." "You came here for answers," Prophet Eremi interrupted, his eyes locking onto Kola's. "Do you want them, or do you want to remain a slave to your father's failures?" The words stung. Kola's hands trembled. He thought of his mother's empty eyes, his sister's hungry stomach, the moneylenders who would come again next week. He stepped forward. Prophet Eremi handed him a small razor blade. "A fingernail, that is all I ask." Kola cut a sliver from his thumbnail and dropped it into the soil. It disappeared instantly, as if the earth had swallowed it. "Speak your burden," Prophet Eremi urged. I want to be free," Kola whispered. "Free from debt, free from this weight." The soil seemed to shift. For a moment, Kola thought he saw something move beneath its surface, something pale and writhing. He stepped back, dizzy. "It is done," Prophet Eremi said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "In 7 days, you will see the fruit of your faith." The service ended. The doors unlocked. People filed out in silence, their faces blank, as if they'd forgotten what they'd just done. Kola stumbled into the night, his head spinning. He looked back at the church. The cross glowed brighter now, and for just a second, he swore he saw a figure standing in the window of the 3rd floor, a floor he hadn't seen anyone enter, a figure with no face. The nightmare started that night. Kola dreamed of soil, black, wet soil that filled his mouth, his lungs, his eyes. He dreamed of hands pulling him down, down, down into the earth, where voices whispered his name in languages he didn't know. He woke gasping, drenched in sweat.
But when he opened his eyes, someone was standing at the foot of his bed. A shadow, tall, thin, watching. Kola screamed. The shadow didn't move. It just stood there, silent and still. Then slowly, it raised one hand and pointed at Kola's chest. When Kola blinked, it was gone. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, he convinced himself it had been a dream. Stress, exhaustion, nothing more. Then the money came.
Kola found it when he went to fetch water. A brown envelope, thick and heavy, lying just inside the doorway. He opened it. Inside were crisp naira notes. He counted them twice, hands shaking. 200,000 naira. Exactly the amount he owed the moneylenders. There was no note, no explanation, just the money. Kola's first thought was gratitude. His second was terror. Where did this come from? He whispered aloud. But deep down he knew. The covenant, the fingernail, the soil. His mother saw the money and wept with joy. His sister hugged him, calling him a miracle worker. But Kola couldn't shake the feeling that he'd made a terrible mistake. He paid off the debt that afternoon. The moneylenders took the cash without question. For the first time in months, Kola could breathe. But that night, the shadow came back. This time, it didn't just watch, it spoke. You have received, now you must give. Kola tried to run, but his body wouldn't move. The shadow leaned closer, its faceless head inches from his own. 7 nights, 7 offerings, or the harvest rots and takes you with it. When Kola woke, his pillow was covered in black soil. Kola didn't return to the church. He was too afraid, but he needed answers. He went to the only library in Alaudo, a dusty room in the back of the town hall, and asked the old librarian, Mr. Ogundele, about the land where the church now stood. Mr. Ogundele's face darkened. "You're asking about Oruaimo," he said quietly. "That land should have stayed empty." He pulled out a folder of old newspaper clippings, articles from the 1970s, faded photographs. A headline read, "Mass disappearance in Alaudo, 14 missing after ritual gathering." Kola's blood ran cold. "There was a cult here," Mr. Ogundele explained. "They called themselves the Harvesters. They believed that if you gave a piece of yourself to the earth, blood, bone, spirit, it would give you wealth and power in return. But the earth is greedy, my boy. It always wants more." What happened to them? One night, they all vanished. 14 people gone. Some say the ground swallowed them. Others say they went willingly, believing they would become gods. Either way, that land has been cursed ever since. Kola's hands trembled. "And now there's a church there." Mr. Ogundele stared at him. "Then it's not a church, son. It's a trap." Kola ran back home, his mind racing. He had to warn people. He had to stop this. But when he reached his house, his mother was gone. His sister was sitting on the floor, crying. "Mama went to the church," Bukola sobbed. "She said Prophet Eremi called her. She says she's going to be healed." Kola's heart stopped. He ran. The church was singing. Kola could hear it from 3 streets away. Low, mournful voices rising and falling in a rhythm that made his skin crawl. The cross on the roof pulsed red like a beating heart. He reached the entrance and pulled on the doors. Locked. "Mama!" he screamed, pounding on the wood. "Mama, open the door!" No response, just the singing. Kola ran around the building, looking for another way in. He found a window on the side, cracked open. He climbed through, cutting his arm on broken glass. Inside, the church was darker than before. The candles were out. The only light came from the glowing cross, which cast long, twisted shadows across the walls. The congregation was there, 50, maybe 60 people, all kneeling in rows, all silent, all staring straight ahead. And at the front, his mother knelt beside Prophet Eremi. "Mama!" Kola ran forward, but when he reached her, she didn't turn. Her eyes were open, but they were empty, glazed, as if she was looking at something far away. "She cannot hear you," Prophet Eremi said calmly. "She is in communion." "What did you do to her?" Kola grabbed the prophet's robe. The prophet smiled. "I gave her what she asked for: peace, release, freedom from the pain of living." Kola looked around the room. All the people here, they were the same. Blank faces, empty eyes, breathing but not alive. "You're stealing them," Kola whispered. "You're taking their souls." "I am taking what they offer," Prophet Eremi corrected. "Every covenant requires a sacrifice. They gave pieces of themselves willingly, hair, blood, nails, and now the harvest is complete. They belong to the soil now, to the harvesters." The ground beneath the church began to tremble. The mats on the floor began to sink, as if the earth was swallowing them. Kola saw hands, pale, skeletal hands, reaching up through the soil, grabbing at the ankles of the kneeling worshippers. "No!" Kola pulled his mother to her feet. She was limp, unresponsive. "You cannot save her," Prophet Eremi said. "The covenant is sealed, unless..." "Unless what?" The prophet's smile widened. "Unless you take her place."
Kola stared at the clay pot. The soil inside was moving now, writhing as if it was alive. "One life for another," Prophet Eremi said. "That is the law of the harvest. Give yourself and she goes free." Kola looked at his mother. She had fallen to the floor, her breathing shallow. All around them, people were being pulled down into the earth, their screams muffled by soil pouring into their mouths. He could save her, but he would lose himself. "No." The word came out stronger than Kola expected. "No?" Prophet Eremi raised an eyebrow. "This isn't God's work," Kola said, his voice shaking but firm. "This is Eshu. This is a devil's contract, and I won't give you my soul." He grabbed the clay pot and hurled it to the ground. The pot exploded. Black soil spread across the floor, and from it something emerged. Not hands, not faces, but roots. Thick black roots that coiled and snapped like snakes. They wrapped around Prophet Eremi's legs, pulling him down. For the first time, the prophet's calm shattered. "What have you done?" he screamed. "I broke the covenant, and if I'm going down, you are coming with me." The roots pulled harder. Prophet Eremi clawed at the floor, but the earth was hungry. It had been promised a harvest, and now it would take the one who'd promised it. "You fool!" the prophet shrieked as he sank. "You've doomed us all." But as he disappeared into the soil, the hands grabbing the other worshippers released them. The earth trembled and then stopped. One by one, the people began to wake, confused, terrified, but alive. Kola crawled to his mother. She blinked, her eyes focused. "Kola?" she whispered. He wept. By morning, the mountain of last hope was gone. Not destroyed, just empty. The walls were still standing, but they were no longer white. They were grey, cracked. The cross on the roof was dark, its wires severed. Inside, the soil had hardened into stone. And in the center of the floor, where the altar had been, was a single inscription carved into the ground. "Ẹni tó bá gbin ìwà búburú, yóò ká ìparun." He who plants evil will harvest destruction. The people of Alaudo gathered outside the church, shaking and silent. Some remembered everything, others remembered nothing, but all of them felt the weight of what they had almost lost. Babasola, the eldest, stepped forward. "We were warned," he said quietly. "The land was forbidden for a reason. But we were desperate, and desperation makes us blind. He turned to Kola. You saved them, boy, not by being strong, but by refusing to give what should never be taken. Kola shook his head. I almost gave in. But you didn't, Baba Sola interrupted, and that is what matters. The old man raised his walking stick and pointed at the church. Let this place stand as a reminder. Not every miracle is from heaven. Not every voice calling God's name speaks with his tongue, and not every door that opens is one you should walk through.
Kola never set foot in that church again. Neither did anyone else. Over time, vines grew over the walls. The roof caved in. Children dared each other to throw stones at it, but no one ever went inside. And on quiet nights, when the wind blew just right, some swore they could still hear singing. Low, mournful, hungry. But the people of Alaudo had learnt their lesson. They learnt that faith is not found in buildings that appear overnight. It is not found in prophets who ask for pieces of you. It is found in the quiet strength to say no when the world demands you give away your soul for a shortcut to peace. As the Yoruba proverb says, "Aimo nolani wo oju orun lo," it is because we don't know the way that we look to the heavens. But sometimes the heavens are silent, not because they don't care, but because the answer must come from within. Kola returned to the old church, Holy Grace Apostolic. It wasn't perfect. The pastor still wore gold. The building still leaked when it rained, but it was real. And real, Kola had learned, was better than miracles built on bones. His mother began to speak again. His sister returned to school. And Kola found work, honest work, that paid slowly but didn't cost his soul. The debt was gone, not by magic, but by sacrifice of a different kind. The kind that didn't demand pieces of flesh, but pieces of pride. The kind that didn't promise quick harvests, but steady growth. And every time Kola passed the ruins of the mountain of last hope, he whispered a prayer, not for prosperity, not for miracles, just for wisdom, to know the difference between a door that leads to salvation and one that leads to the grave. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to this channel for more African folk tales that teach, inspire, and remind us of the wisdom our ancestors passed down. Drop a comment below and tell us, where are you watching from? And remember, not every light in the darkness is a guiding star. Some are flames waiting to consume. Until then, may your path be clear and your spirit be wise. Odabo.